Hey, it's Vicky, and today I'm here to talk about the books I'm planning to read in November. I can't believe we're already to the tail end of 2023. It just seems to be going by very fast. And November is a very busy month, exciting month. Obviously we have the Thanksgiving holiday at the end of the month. My daughter's birthday is this month. We actually have a lot of November babies in my family, so there's a lot of birthdays to celebrate. Preparing for Christmas, all that good stuff. So November is busy but fun. And yeah, I have some really good books planned, so let's just dive in. So the first thing I always try to do in November is to participate in Nonfiction November, which my version of Nonfiction November is to just try to read nonfiction books. Pretty simple. So I have two on my TBR for this month. The first one is one that I've had for a very long time, and it's a very popular nonfiction book that I haven't read. It is The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson, and this is about the 1893 World's Fair that took place in Chicago, and I think it deals with the architect behind it and sort of his whole ambition to sort of put America on the map or whatever. But then also it's about this serial killer that was using the World's Fair to sort of lure his victims. So it has sort of a creepy sort of stance to it, which is why this book is going to help me fulfill a prompt for the Books in the Freezer reading challenge, which is to read like creepy nonfiction. So because this deals with, in part, deals with a serial killer, I thought it would fit the prompt perfectly, and like I said, it's one that I've had for a very long time, and I feel like so many people have read, and I just need to get on it and read this book. The other nonfiction book that I want to read for Nonfiction November is Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson, and Bryan Stevenson is an attorney who, I'm not sure when he started it, but he started the Equal Justice Initiative. He's the founder, which is basically a legal practice that focuses on helping people who have been like wrongly accused, or let's see, he defends like people that are poor, wrongly accused, and whatnot. And this book in particular deals with one particular client that he had named Walter McMillian, who was sentenced to death for a murder that he did not commit. So I have read another book that dealt with Bryan Stevenson. It was a memoir called, oh my gosh, The Sun Does Shine, I believe is what it was called. It was a fabulous book. And in that book, he was I don't know if he was on death row, or was he was definitely in prison. I can't remember if he was on death row, but Bryan Stevenson helped him basically get out of prison. And so I've been wanting to read this book ever since I read that one. So I'm glad that I'm finally getting to it. Then for the buzzword reading challenge, the November sort of buzzword is good. So I'm going to be reading The Good Daughter by Karen Slaughter, and this is on my Kindle. And I've had this book a while also. And this will be I think it's only going to be my second Karen Slaughter book. A couple years ago I read, what was that book called? Pretty Girls? Something like that. And I loved it. It was like a 5-star book, and I've been wanting to read Karen Slaughter since, and I don't know why I haven't. But this book in particular deals with a woman who is an attorney, and her father was also an attorney. So she's kind of like taking after her dad. And like 30 years in the past, when she was younger, her family, I believe, were attacked. And her mother was killed, and it was really brutal, really bad. And now, 30 years later, she, like I said, is a practicing attorney, and something happens in the town that is very reminiscent of what happened to her and her family 30 years prior. So it brings up a lot of stuff, and I don't know, it kind of goes from there. So the one thing I know about Karen Slaughter, just from the one book I've read of hers, is she's not afraid to go there. She can get pretty dark, pretty gritty, pretty violent, and all of that stuff. So I'm expecting that going into this book, and I think it's going to be a wild ride. Next, I'm going to be reading for the Literally Dead Book Club. The November pick is Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. This is an anticipated book for me that I went to the store and picked up the day it came out, because I really loved her last book, The Last Housewife. It was a 5-star read, and for me, it was really like important because I typically don't give thrillers 5 stars, and that book got a 5-star from me. So I had to read her next book. And this one deals with a woman, I believe it's a young woman, who lives in this small town somewhere in the South, and there is a killer on the loose, and she and this other, like, this boy or guy, I don't know if he's a grown man, I'm assuming he's a grown man, but he was kind of like, back when they were kids, he was like the boy from the wrong side of the tracks, like he was like the bad boy or whatever. They have to kind of team up to figure out who this killer is or whatever. But then when you read the synopsis, there's also this mention of an urban, like sort of like, not an urban legend, sort of like just like a folktale, like kind of local legend about this monster called the Low Man, who is kind of like a vampire type monster that kills people when they're sleeping, like when the moon is not full or something, or when the moon, what is it? What does it say? On moonless nights. So I don't know if this is gonna have supernatural stuff in it, but that is very intriguing to me. And again, if it's anything like The Last Housewife, I'm gonna love it, and I'm excited to be reading it. Next, we have another book that I am reading to help me with a books in the freezer prompt, which is to read a horror retelling. So this is another one that I've had on my shelves for quite a while, and I believe also I have only read one book from this author and have been meaning to read more from her. Anyway, it's The Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon, and this is a Frankenstein retelling or reimagining, or it's inspired by Frankenstein, so I thought it would be perfect for this prompt. And Jennifer McMahon, like I said, I read her book The Winter People quite a few years ago now, and I loved it. And I've been meaning to read more of her stuff, and I haven't gotten around to it. And this one deals with a psychiatrist who is a guardian to her 2 grandchildren, a boy and a girl, and then she takes in this other little girl named Iris, who is different. I'm not really sure how or why. And so the 3 kids, they sort of have a bond. And that story takes place in the past, in the 70s. And then you have a modern timeline that takes place in 2019 that deals with a woman named Lizzie Shelley, which I enjoy that. A nice little nod to Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. And she is a podcast host who travels to Vermont because a girl has been abducted, and people in the town are saying that they saw a monster and they think a monster took her. And her podcast deals with that sort of stuff. So she's doing it for like her podcast. So I don't know, somehow these 2 timelines are going to converge. There's Frankenstein nods and vibes and whatnot. So I think it's going to be a great fall read. I'm looking forward to checking it out. And then my final read for November is, I'm trying to finish up my Stephen King goal for the year, which is to read 5 new to me Stephen King books. And so the next one, because I'm trying to read them in chronological order, the next one is Everything's Eventual, which is a short story collection. So I've read quite a few Stephen King short story collections, and typically there's a couple of bangers, a couple of 5-star, wow, awesome stories, and then there's like a couple of turds, and then there's some that are kind of in the middle. I imagine that this is how this book's going to be as well. But who knows, it might surprise me. There are a couple stories in here that I am intrigued by. The first one is 1408, which was turned into a movie that had John Cusack in it, who I love, and I really liked the movie. And then it also has a story in it that has to do with the Dark Tower. I guess it has a really cool Dark Tower connection, so I'm looking forward to that one too. So yeah, we shall see. Hopefully it has more bangers than turds. I guess we'll find out. Alright, so that is it. Those are my reading plans for November. Please let me know down below what you're planning to read. I would love to know if you're taking part in Nonfiction November. I'd love to know what nonfiction books you're reading. And I think that's it. So I hope you guys have a great month, and I will talk with you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.